Hi, Homeworthy. I'm Carol Han Pyle. Welcome to my home in East Hampton. Come on in. I'd love to show you around.
You're watching Homeworthy, where we believe every home has a story.
Hi, I'm Carol Han Pyle. I am the founder and CEO of a fragrance brand called Nette, and welcome to my home. The backstory behind this house is that we were house hunting for about a year before we landed on this place, and we were really undecided between getting something upstate, which we loved. We got married upstate, or out here in the Hamptons, which, we loved both areas. We found this house and it was really beautiful. I loved the land that it was on and the backyard and the pool. It had only had one owner throughout its life. It was the owner that had actually built the house. And I was really charmed by that. But it was really in such an outdated place. The owner had built it in about 1995, I want to say, and they hadn't touched it since then. So it was pretty outdated. The architecture was very of that era. There were kind of strange balconies and open areas, and lots of just outdated touches. The kitchen was all kind of formica. So there was a lot of work to be done, even though I thought the bones were really good. So anyway, we bought the house and we decided to move into it primarily because the pandemic hit 3 months after we bought the house, and we were living in the city then. So we decided to decamp out here, and we moved in with not a single piece of furniture in here besides a pull-out sofa that the owner had left for us. So we very slowly furnished it throughout the pandemic, and we had planned to go right into our renovation, but we ended up living here. And that was actually a blessing in disguise because it really gave us a chance to get to know the house before changing anything. Our design vision for the space was to make it really clean, a little bit on the more minimal side, because my husband and I both really like sort of clean spaces, but with really luxurious materials and finishes and some really special vintage pieces. I would say that our style, that's really what our style revolves around. I'm like a hunter. I really like to hunt out really special pieces from the past and incorporate them into the overall design. I think that there's a scheme, but it's punctuated with kind of unique, quirkier objects. Welcome to our library and entryway. This is one of my favorite little areas in the home. It's just this very cozy corner of the house where people use this daybed. I love this daybed. I actually found it on First Dibs, and it is a Pierre Chapeau daybed. I can't remember what decade it's from, but we ended up reupholstering the actual cushion with a mohair velvet from Pierre Frey, and it just feels like heaven, and it's so comfortable to just lay on. I feel like entryway areas don't really get used, so I wanted to create something really cozy that people could curl up in, have really easy access to books. I'm such a reader, and these are actually like books that I have read, and a very small portion of the total books that I actually own. And there are some really good ones in here. So I love it when guests come by and really I find them, sitting on this daybed and curled up with a book. Down here are just books that we've collected through the years. And then I love ceramics, specifically Scandinavian ceramics that are vintage. I don't know what maker made this one, but I feel like it's a pretty prominent one. But I love the weight of this particular vase. There are a selection of other ceramics. This guy broke, but I could not bring myself to toss it. So it just sits a little bit chipped, but it's from Sweden. There's some rocks from the beach. My mom, who's no longer with us, the last time she was here, she collected these rocks and brought them back. And I hate clutter, but I will never get rid of them. And then, you know, other various vases. I actually feel like this is from Zara Home. So hot tip, I think that Zara Home actually has some great ceramics. This coffee table book I love. It's actually from Longhouse Reserve, which is only a few minutes away from here. The most beautiful garden, super kid-friendly, beautiful sculptures. It feels like Alice in Wonderland. These are little sheepskin mushroom stools, and they are from Sweden. We got them at this gallery called Modernity in Stockholm, and they're all just kind of hand refinished from vintage legs. And now we can just go over to the living room. One of the things that really drew us to the house was the fact that there is this really nice double height living room area, and that the windows and the light are really plentiful. So when we were speaking to the previous owner, she had told us that her husband had positioned the house in such a way where the back is south facing. So we get a lot of this really beautiful south facing light through all of these back windows, which is so nice to have. And then, so I don't know if you guys can see this, but there are actually 2 trees that are growing through the deck, and they had carved out holes in the deck so that the trees could really grow through and they didn't have to chop them down when they built the house. And it really gives this impression of the house being a little bit of a tree house. We actually called it that when we first moved in, because when you're in here, there is so much light that floods in, especially in the winter when the leaves have fallen. But it really does feel like you are ensconced in nature. And so much of the area around the house are protected woods, which is really nice. We really wanted to create a comfortable living space where people could really just like sit on the floor, sink into a soft sofa, and just sit and watch movies or chat or have cocktails for hours on end, which is exactly how this room ends up being used. I remember last Thanksgiving, we had a Friendsgiving and we had like 8 or 9 people here, and everyone was like, you know, covered in blankets, curled up on sofas. Some people were laying on the floor with pillows, and we all watched whatever Lindsay Lohan Netflix movie was out that year. And it was just like a very cozy, fun, convivial night. And that's really the dream. I really want our spaces to be places that are cozy and comfortable, and where people can feel like they can just throw their shoes off, grab a blanket, and cozy up. So this sofa is actually vintage, and it was reupholstered in this really beautiful wool fabric. It's like a tweedy wool fabric that's actually men's suiting. So it is like this really cute little vintage piece that we love. This is such a beautiful, I'm a huge fan of Pierre Frey mohair velvet. I think it's the most beautiful fabric. And this ottoman and chair situation is from a place called Dagmar in London that does really beautiful furniture pieces. And we had them cover it in this Pierre Frey velvet. These little stools are vintage, and we love them because they're obviously used as little side tables, but they're super easy and light to just move around the room and use wherever we need them. So I found this piano on eBay. I used to play the piano. I took lessons for 10 years when I was a kid, and I always feel like pianos are such warm pieces to have in a house, and I make a point to get pianos for every space that I'm living in. It's a Sauter piano, and it belonged to a couple who was living in this beautiful brownstone in Brooklyn, and the husband just never played it anymore. So they were looking to sell it. And so I bought it from them. I went over to their house to look at it, and Sauter is this really beautiful German brand. Their pianos are all hand-built in the Black Forest in Germany. I just really like the warmth of the wood. I think it's really hard to find a beautiful wooden piano that's kind of like of this color. So I was really thrilled to have found that. These are actually some of our candles, Nette candles. This one is one of actually the first fragrances that we ever approved. It's called Another Life, and it's this really beautiful vanilla cocoa shell fragrance. Super comforting. It's one of our mini votives that's actually quite large. And then we have 2 other scents in there. I don't believe in a signature house scent, but I know that there are a lot of people who would disagree with me. I think because I work in the fragrance space and I'm always smelling new things, I feel like I need to switch both my personal fragrance and my home fragrance pretty constantly. But I do have like my interior designer and one of my close friends, Sarah Mendel, she uses our scent 12th Night, which is a linden blossom scent. I'm not surprised she was drawn to that scent. It's so sophisticated, but she uses that scent to scent her home. And every time I go over there, it's very much a signature of hers now. And when I smell that scent, I think of her. So it does make sense, I think, to have a signature. It's a really nice touch that people will remember you by. When I first moved to New York, I ended up doing a couple of internships when I was in college at various fashion magazines like Harper's Bazaar and Interview magazine. And I really fell in love with the fashion industry. So I ended up getting a job at Elle, and I was a fashion editor there for about 4 or 5 years. Right in that sort of like mid-2000s era when that world was very actually glamorous, and it was peak Devil Wears Prada era. And I loved it. Very, very demanding, but I loved it a lot. And then I ended up starting a social media agency in 2010, the same year that Instagram launched, and really started that agency to be able to advise brands on their online digital social media content, which back then was a little bit of the Wild West. Nobody really knew what they were doing, so they needed a lot of help. So I ran that agency for 10 years, and then the pandemic hit. And I found myself out here at this house in a very unrenovated house and isolated, not going out for meetings or dinners or workouts anymore. So I had a lot of time, and I actually ended up losing half of the clients at my agency pretty much overnight. So I didn't even know if I would have a job to come back to once the pandemic was over. I decided to really sit that year and take some time to figure out what I wanted to do. And I ended up thinking a lot about my childhood. So my mom was an immigrant. She came from South Korea, and she opened up a candle store on the water in Sausalito, where I spent so much of my childhood. Literally, my first childhood memory is of watching her hand dip and hand carve these really beautiful, colorful pillars. And that store was such a safe space for me. I didn't have a nanny when I was growing up. That really wasn't a thing in my world. So I just went to work with my mom when I was a kid before I started going to school. So much of my childhood was in that space with all of the amazing smells, and I've always loved fragrance. So I ended up deciding to spend that entire year incubating what Nette could be. People really resonated with it because I think at the time, I was going through an IVF process. I was trying to get pregnant. I was really trying to clean up a lot of the things that I was using around the house, the things that I was eating. Candles was a big thing. Candles have obviously been a huge part of my life ever since I was born. So I've always burned Trudon, Diptyque, Byredo, these really beautiful legacy brands. But I realized in that process that they were such black boxes of information, and I had really no idea what ingredients they were using and how safe they were to burn. And I was hearing a lot about hormone disrupting ingredients in candles and fragrance. So I decided to start Nette and make clean ingredients and formulations and quality a huge priority about the brand, and transparency. But I also wanted to make sure that it was a very chic, well-branded luxury brand as well. And I feel like that was where the white space was. There were these legacy luxury brands on one end of the spectrum, and then on the other end, there were these sort of like $25 one note, clean, essential oil candles that were sort of not branded well and not anything that I was super excited to buy. So I created Nette to sit somewhere in the middle of that. I think the sense of smell and how it relates to your home environment is so important. You know, the sense of smell is the most powerful sense you have of all 5 senses in terms of shifting the way you feel, shifting emotions. There are a plethora of scientific studies that show how powerful the sense of smell is in relation to how you feel. And I think that when people walk into your home, you want them to immediately feel good and comfortable and happy and grounded. And the sense of and how you scent your space has so much to do with that. And now we can go into our kitchen. This kitchen looked nothing like this when we bought the house. Again, it was one of the spaces in the house that was very 1990s coded, and every appliance was from that decade. So you can really imagine that we had a lot of work to do. We actually took down one of the walls to really open it up a lot, and we redid the entire structure of the space and obviously replaced all of the appliances. The stone was really one of the first decisions that we made about the kitchen. We really wanted to use something pretty heavily veined, and we were also really attracted to the color gray in our marble. So we decided on this really beautiful, cool toned gray stone that, as you can see, has a lot of detail in terms of the veining, and it's pretty dramatic. So I think that that really acts as the showcase and kind of centerpiece of the kitchen. Since then, I know 2 other people who have renovated and used the exact stone that we have. So I think it was a hit. And then in terms of the cabinetry, we did, I'm such a lover of books. So I did want to create open shelves that face towards the living room in the cabinet. And the intention was to line them with cookbooks. That hasn't happened actually because we needed space for some vases and ceramics. So that's what it's being used for now. But I do think it's nice. It's a nice warm touch to have some space for personal objects or books within the kitchen. I'm a huge cook. I wish I had more time to cook as much as I wanted to. I love cooking. I actually used to have a cooking blog called Milk and Mode in my 20s, where I would make recipes and post about them. So I love the kitchen, and I think the kitchen really is the heart of the home, at least for us. One of the things that we love about this kitchen is this Le Conche range. It's from France, and again, it's something that is like hand built. We had to wait a year to get it. I think we had to place our order for it 12 months before it arrived. So they really custom build every single order that they get, and it's honestly beautiful, but it also is a real chef's range, so it works really well. My favorite dish for entertaining to make is beef stew of some sort, to put it really simply. So I love a bourguignon, or Ina Garten has some really amazing stewed beef recipes, especially in the winter months. Entertaining out here, something super thick and comforting and warm. Okay, now we can go over to our dining table. This little eating nook or dining room, we really wanted to tuck into this corner. It really wasn't being used as a dining space when we first moved in. I can't remember what was in here, but it wasn't a table. So we found a table that kind of perfectly fit the dimensions of this little space. I love how there are windows on 3 sides, so you're really bathed in light, especially in the morning when you're eating breakfast down here. And then our rug that we chose for the space has a tree on it. And we thought that that was a really good homage to our treehouse. The dining chairs we love. They are vintage, and we had them recovered in this really pale gray velvet. I really love the fact that the backs of the chairs resemble little hearts, and they're really comfortable to sit on. So now I'd love to show you outside. So the outdoors of our home is one of my favorite parts about being out here. We're actually in the middle of a protected forest. So each home has a lot of acreage. We're not really allowed to build past a certain point, and we're just surrounded by a lot of land. So it feels super private. These two trees, the original owners actually built the deck around them so that they wouldn't have to cut them down. So these two trees are actually growing out of these holes in the deck that were carved out, which is so nice. And then we can go downstairs. So I love the way this back area was structured. It kind of reminded me of LA because it is so hilly and you have to go down this flight of steps to get to the pool area. So one of the things that I really love about the space out here is that it is on a slightly lower elevation than the rest of the backyard. So it really gives people a separate area to hang out in. So if we have a house full of guests, everyone can kind of have their own space if they need it. And then I love the pool. The shape of the pool is something that we were really drawn to when we first saw this. It's super unique. It has, we call it the Tetris pool because to me it looks like a Tetris piece. And again, there is like kind of separation even in the pool. Like I love to host. So when we have a house full of guests, I feel like it's so nice for people to be able to not feel super hemmed in and not have the pool be right outside the house, have some separation in space. I always see people even from the upstairs master bedroom window, just hanging out down here, jumping into the pool. It's really refreshing and it's a fun pool. A perfect day in the Hamptons for me and my family. Well, most of the time when we're out here, we have a pretty set routine that I find really wonderful. So we will get up early because our kid is 2.5 years old, so he's an early riser still. And we'll immediately go outside and go on a beach run. So we have 2 dogs who love the beach, and our son loves the beach. So we'll all pile into the car, we'll drive out to the beach, we'll take everyone on a really long beach run, which is such a nice way to start the day and center yourself. And then we'll go to Carissa's and or Amber Waves, and we'll get breakfast and coffee for everyone, and either sit at the farm or sit at Carissa's and really take our time and enjoy that breakfast. And then we'll come back home and we'll really just hang out here for most of the weekend. We usually have dinner plans with friends when we're out here, so the days are kind of family time and then the nights are more for socializing. Let's go on upstairs. Okay, so now we are going into our second floor sitting area, which is just a really cozy nook for people to hang out in. Every single piece in this area is vintage. I mean, again, I'm a huge fan of vintage furniture and pieces. I love mid-century design. I think that they are really like the founding fathers of design, the way we know it today. And so much of the new pieces that are produced today are inspired by what they did. So I think it's really interesting to be able to source original pieces from a certain era, and if they need to be brought back to life in some way, to be able to do that. This little coffee table is actually 2 nightstands that we pushed together to make a coffee table. This is a vintage ceramic. These little armchairs are recovered vintage pieces. This is a vintage piece that was reupholstered in sheepskin. And then this wall hanging is from Modernity in Stockholm. And I love it because it is sort of atypical, I think, for a piece of wall art. And it just has this really cozy texture that I think warms up the space a lot. So this piece is by this female artist named Tanya Ling. I think that she works out of Brooklyn, and she makes these really beautiful sort of graphic line paintings. And I thought that the movement in this was really nice and soothing to look at and fit the space really well. So this is our master bedroom. We wanted this space to feel really light and bright and open. And, we wanted to have a lot of space for our kids to run around and our dogs to run around. So most of the pieces in here are white or like a creamy white. The 3 photographs above our bed are by this amazing Japanese photographer that just goes around taking seascape photos in the same perspective. So those are 3 different oceans, which we thought was really perfect for a house in the Hamptons. Probably my favorite piece in here is this armchair and double ottoman situation. I call these ottomans little clouds. I think it's so cute, this tiny little baby ottoman. And again, this is a vintage piece. We got it from a gallery in Sweden where we got a lot of stuff. So this seating area is also really cozy. It overlooks our backyard and our pool. And we also really like to sit up here and read before bed. These cushions are actually one of the only things that we didn't change from the original house. These are what the owners had on here. And we wanted to keep something, so we kept those. This is our master bathroom. So this bathroom has changed so much in the renovation. This is probably the most dramatic makeover from what it was before. Just about everything that you see is different. So including the shape of the room. So we stole a little bit of closet space to extend the size of this bathroom. We restructured what used to be the shower, a very tight little corner stall, and made it into this very large walk-in, which is nice. I love that there's a bench in there. I feel like if you get tired and want to sit and steam in your shower, it's a really nice thing to have. And when I'm out here, I love this bathtub. I take baths every day when I'm out here. I also just really love these vintage sconces that we have. They remind me of tuxedos for some reason. So I call them our tuxedo lights. So the marble throughout the bathroom is also the same marble that we used in the kitchen. So I thought that it was nice to carry that through upstairs to create a linear conversation of sorts between rooms. And then these tiles are from Morocco, and they're all handmade and they're uncoated. So they'll age really interestingly. It's sort of, I actually like it when I feel like people get freaked out when stone gets dinged or stained or damaged, but I actually really embrace that. I think that it's a sign of a life well lived. Same goes for these tiles. My husband was really freaked out about the fact that they were uncoated because the second you step on them or get them wet, they change. So they actually do look different from what they looked like when we first moved in. They've darkened. Certain tiles are different colors than others, but I think it all adds to the character of the space. I think to me, home really means a safe space where everyone that you love can gather and be together.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to go to homeworthy.com for exclusive content, shopping guides, and so much more.